We're here on the left bank, and the left bank is, famous for, first of all, its monasteries and abbeys, and secondly, as of the 13th century, for its universities. Okay, and what is the most famous university in Paris?
Sorbonne.
Where is the Sorbonne?
Right there.
No, there.
Oh, there?
That's
Right
the
there.
Collège de France. That is the Sorbonne University. That has nothing to do with what it was before. It was actually sort of a pension home for poor children, for poor students. That was started off in the 1200s by a man called Robert de Sorbonne.
Look at that guy.
There were actually no places to give courses. They would give that. When we talk about the campus, it was out in the fields. University courses. And when there was bad weather, well, they would go into this accommodation for poor students, and little by little, the Sorbonne became the great university of Paris. I'm going to make you jealous. How much does 1 year at the Sorbonne cost?
Nothing.
No, don't say zero. 220 euros. There you go. 220. Well, that's what you're doing.
Follow you?
Yeah, 220 euros. You did notice that we were going uphill there. Okay, so that is what we call the Sainte Geneviève mountain, the mountain Sainte Geneviève, dedicated to the patron saint of Paris. But that is really where the Romans actually settled down as of 52 BC. Before that, on the island where we're going afterwards, we had a little fisherman's tribe that had come from the east, that arrived in Paris more or less in 300 BC, looking for a protected place to settle down. As we had an island there, they thought it's protected, and they're the first known inhabitants of Paris. They were known as the Parisis, thus the name Paris. The Romans come in 52 BC, they attack the Parisis, and they think, okay, let's leave the Parisis on that island. It floods regularly, we're going to go and live up on the hill, creating actually quite an important city on the hill. 20,000 inhabitants, of which very, very little is left. After that, as it continues, after that we have barbarian invasions 500 years later, the Huns, the Goths, and so on, and these are real villains. They rape, they pillage, they kill, they burn, etc. The Romans get scared, they abandon their hill, they're going to go and settle down on the island, creating a governor's palace that will then become our royal palace, and they will have pagan temples, and they're going to build the first walls around the city. Okay? And from then onwards, that island that we're going to go on to afterwards was considered as the center of Paris, the center of France, and as we're not the most modest of nations, the center of the world. And you'll see your heart is going to start pounding really hard as soon as you're on it. You'll feel that you are in the center of everything. And if you don't, I'll remind you to feel it. Okay? And that is to have your kids learn French, learn French, do the last year of high school in France, and from there they're considered as, they can have access to universities if they're good pupils at that last year of high school, and they can pay 220 euros.
I'll tell them.
There you go. I think that's the way to do it.
Do they have dormitories?
No. That's the big problem. 220 euros after the year, but then they have to find a place to sit. So this is known as the Hotel. When we talk about and they had created in the Middle Ages their school in Paris, and to be able to manage their school, the abbots decided to build themselves a little, let's call it a pied-à-terre in Paris. This is their little Roman amphitheatre. Those are the only things left in Paris are the 5 years of the Roman presence. So these were sort of like these were sort of public baths that were open to the Parisians as well as to the Romans, and it was a little bit as if you were going to a spa nowadays. You would have like 3 baths. There would be a hot bath called the Calvarium, then you would have the lukewarm bath called the Tepidarium, and then the cold bath called the Frigidarium. Okay? So the brave ones would go from the Caldarium to the Frigidarium, and the less brave via the Tepidarium. And then you would also have the sort of gymnasium around. You could have massages and so on. And if you paid a bit more, you would have a few prostitutes in the vicinity. I mean, it was like
Told you.
leisure activity. I mean, French, Romans and Parisians were clean at the time. As soon as the barbarians come in the 5th century, then we stopped washing until the 80s. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. So,
Men only? No.
men, well, yes, there would be a few women, but for the massages.
So the Parisi and the Romans got along.
Yeah, it was. You know that there is a sort of theory as to where the Romans were. No, that's not the main reason. This, as I told you, this is a district where our universities developed in the Middle Ages. And so you would have students from all over Europe that would create their own little colleges. So you would have the Scottish college, the Irish college, the German college, the Spanish college. And what was the common language of all of these people? It was Latin. And so, as all of these colleges were really in this district, it became the Latin
Quarter. Interesting.
And this Latin Quarter is one of the rare districts of Paris that remind us of Paris in the Middle Ages. This would have been like an avenue. You're in a big avenue here, and I'll show you what a normal street looked like at the time. And our Emperor Napoleon III in the 1850s thought that if we have had so many revolutions in France, it's because of the poor living conditions of the French, and I'd say of the Parisians, I'd say, and mostly the ones living in these old medieval quarters. And so he decided to destroy more than 70% of the city and of this medieval housing to create wide avenues in a straight line. And obviously destroying, he has to build a new type of housing, very different from the housing that we have here in this district. Make a right here, madame. Do a little stoppage, like buttons. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is not taking button pastries there. Half of it is cake, half of it is
Look what we have going now.
Just here on our right-hand side, you can see a local parish church that dates back to the 13th century, dedicated to Seine, with its beautiful gargoyles just above our heads here. And this taxi is in my way. No, it's okay. Okay, so I want to show you what an ordinary street looks like. Here's just ahead of us here, you can really see what a lot of very, very narrow. You have to look extremely narrow. You can see that the houses aren't straight, they kind of go out to the sides like that. These were what we call like half-timbered houses. They've been covered with plaster afterwards, but most of the time, you know, all half-timbered houses. You must have been to war. Yes, you've seen them, obviously. So, would be practical to live on one of those streets. You could have real salt and say, pass me the salt, and the person on the other side of the street, the great bouffon, can pass it on to you. But at the same time, a fire starts off, a plague epidemic, a cholera epidemic. I mean, it was. So, you can imagine that here. Obviously, the sewage system, so what you do with the church, you use water. A lot of you, when you imagine Paris, this is the type of street that you see on the street. Sorry. I think that Paris, the water base is well high. Movies, places like Woody Allen, if you've seen Midnight in Paris, I mean, this would be like one of the typical shops of Paris. Six-story high buildings with the beautiful water in at the balconies on the third floor and on the fifth floor, because that is what Napoleon III. Notre Dame Cathedral, and this church here is called Saint-Julien-de-Pauvre. Both of those churches were started in 1164. And look at the style of Notre Dame, which is like a grand Gothic, and this being only a little parish church that would be kind of given the used stones, not my stones of Notre Dame, is actually built in that Romanesque style with the rounded arches and so on. So even though we have gone towards the Gothic style, this little parish church is in the old style that we master well, and Notre Dame in the brand new Gothic grand style.
And how much are they going to get completed by the Olympics?
How much are they going to get completed by the Olympics? I mean, it's
No,
impossible.
Notre Dame.
It won't be completed by the Olympics. Macron, when he announced the day of the fire, 15th of April 2019, that it would be ready in 5 years. He had no idea that there would be 2 years of COVID, that there would be the war in Ukraine and so on. Plus, one of the big problems for the renovation of Notre Dame was the emanation of lead from the roof. And so they really have to protect their workers all the time. So it's a long process. Even nowadays, they still put on these outfits to protect themselves from the emanation of lead. So there have been a few little problems, even though they are saying that we will have mass in Notre Dame by the end of 2024. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be able to do a Christmas mass to celebrate more or less the end of the works, but then it won't be open to public to visit it until I think we have to look another year. But they will respect the year 2024, but not the year. This here, just in front of us, is a very good view of, I'd say, the damage that Notre Dame suffered. Because, I mean, it was really just the roof and the steeple that fell. The roof, because, you know, that roof is made of this sort of wooden framework with old oak trees that were more than 800 years old. And that is what is going to catch fire as well, and the fire propagates to the steeple collapses inside the church. And where we were so lucky was that the flying buttresses that you can see there, can you see the flying buttresses? They did not break. Just one stained glass window broke. Just one. It was more or less at the level. You see the protruding parts there. You can see the big scaffolding where they're going to put the new steeple, and then there's a part protruding on its right-hand side. There was a window there in that triangular part there, and that is going to break. But that's the only one. All of the rest, lots of them have been taken down and going to be put up again. And we're going to have actually a beautiful cathedral afterwards, because they are painting each one of the chapels, renovating entirely the organ. I mean, when it reopens, it will be magnificent. The idea is to not build it as it was in the Middle Ages, but build it as it was on the 14th of April 2019, with all of the renovations of the 19th century, because, you know, after the revolution, it was like ransacked by the revolutionaries, and there are going to be big works that were done by an architect called Munich. We took a little bit of, I'd say, his 19th century ideas of what a 13th century Gothic church should be like. So that steeple that collapsed was 1860s. It was not the old steeple of the wall. The natives would want this, not that we have to say. Not to say that it is a big house. Before I tell you more about the cathedral, I want to talk to you. I mean, you have a very famous shop. Shakespeare and Co. Yeah, it's not a bad spot. Okay. Stand here because. Okay, so here you are in front of the extremely famous bookshop, Shakespeare & Co. This is not the original site of Shakespeare & Co. It used to be in another street called Rue de l'Odéon on the left bank close to the Luxembourg Gardens. But this bookshop was created by an American called Sylvia Beach in the 1920s, and it was a shop that sold English language books. But she was also a great friend of all of this writers community known a little bit as the Lost Generation in Paris in the 1920s. For example, she was really nice to Hemingway and his wife Hadley. When his wife Hadley is like pregnant, Sylvia Beach, I don't agree with her, but she didn't trust French doctors, and so she is going to pay for the fare for Hadley to give birth in Toronto rather than in France. I mean, we know how to do those things, but she didn't think so. She's also going to help out James Joyce. When James Joyce wants to have his very scandalous book, Ulysses, published, no publisher wants it. Even in Paris, they know enough English to see the content of Ulysses, and she has a really good idea. She thinks, oh, down in the center of France there, in the town of Lyon, nobody speaks any English. I'm going to give them the manuscript. They have no idea what they're printing. They're just putting letters next to each other, and she is going to manage to have 1,000 or 2,000 copies of Ulysses, and in those first copies there are a whole lot of mistakes because they didn't know what they were writing, but thanks to that it was published. So she's going to actually leave Paris just after World War II, but will sell the name Shakespeare & Co. and the bookshop Shakespeare & Co. to this other American whose name was George Whitman. He claimed to be a descendant of Walt Whitman. Whether he was or not, I have no idea. And he's going to have a daughter that he's going to call Sylvia Beach Whitman. And he died about 10 years ago, and now it is Sylvia Beach Whitman that has taken over the shop, and they actually continue helping young writers. That second floor there, you can see there's a light open there. That's a place where anybody can go and read books, but you can also, as a struggling writer, come and sleep here. You've got a bench with a mattress on it. You could sleep here, and then against that you have to give a few hours work to the store. And I'm sure that the young man who told me to stand here rather than over there was one of those poor struggling writers who is giving his hours to the store.
That's great.
Okay, so we're going to go onto the island, and don't forget to have your half hour.
Yes.
Get you there in time.
I'd say I agree. The stragglers.
Stragglers, yes. Notre Dame Cathedral was started in 1163 and won't be finished until 1300. So that is over 130 years to build this cathedral. And what used to be the very elegant part of Notre Dame, for those of you who have seen it before, was actually the back part with very elegant flying buttresses. And I had always considered that this facade was sort of a sturdy facade. I mean, well, you saw the cathedral in Rouen. I mean, there's more elegance on that facade, even though it's extremely wide. If you've been to Reims in Champagne country, it's narrower, and it's what we've got left, right? So we've got to be happy with this facade. So, as you know, people in the Middle Ages don't know how to read and write, so they get their education from visual aids, stained glass windows outside, sculptures inside, stained glass windows inside, sculptures this is dedicated to Notre Dame, who is Our Lady. So,
Right.
Lady died.
Yeah.
The Virgin Mary. We have two portals dedicated to the Virgin Mary. I can't describe them. What's interesting is also that row of kings. These are the kings of the Old Testament, the kings of Judah. During the French Revolution, they had no idea that these were not kings of France. And so the revolutionaries are going to lasso all of these statues that all fall to the ground. Sorry. That are all going to fall to the ground. And they're going to actually ransack a lot of the cathedral. Notre Dame will be transformed into a temple of reason. And in the 1830s, 1840s, you're going to have this sort of romantic movement of all of the intellectuals that were very fond of old medieval churches, cathedrals, and so on, and they're going to want to start renovating them. One of those romantic writers is going to be Victor Hugo with his famous book Notre Dame de Paris, translated as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That book is going to be translated in lots of different languages, and thanks to international funds, we're going to be able to renovate Notre Dame Cathedral. All of those kings of the Old Testament are, so, 19th century. Going forward in time, 1st of April 1977. We're in the Opera District, we're building safes for a bank, and the workers are kind of digging, and they're going to fall on these huge heads. The CEO of the bank, his name was Giscard d'Estaing. He was a cousin of our president, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. He's going to be brought one of these statues. The guys tell them, look, we've just found. He looks at them and he says, wow, they seem to be the heads of the statues of Notre Dame. And he's going to call the curator of that little museum that we were just walked past, the museum dedicated to the Middle Ages, and he says, hello, I'm Mr. Giscard d'Estaing. I've just found the heads of the statues of Notre Dame. The guy says, yeah, sure. First of all, April Fool. He jumps into a taxi, and it really was the statues of the kings of Notre Dame. What had happened? You have the mad revolutionaries that destroy them, and then you have mad royalists that pick up the little bits and put them in their gardens before having their heads cut. And it's not until the 1970s that we found them. Okay, we've got to head off maybe the fastest way now to the
These people are in line to get permission to stay in France.
Then became a prison. It was a prison where all the people that ended up in. That's where but it used to be the royal palace. And here on the left-hand side you have this beautiful and in the middle you used to have a gallery in the palace, the royal palace in Saint-Chapelle. And now it is our Palace of Justice. And I'm thinking about as we are walking towards our boat. Pardon me. Yes, we can walk it all the way to the Pont Neuf. C'est gentil, parce que sinon là on n'a pas le temps.
Là non,
Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
c'est un procès des attentats.
Ah,
Voilà.
c'est lequel celui-là? C'est le...
Celui qui a tué le couple de policiers à Magnon-Guibon.
Ok.
Un djihadiste.
Yeah, so why is it all blocked off? Another terrorist attack trial that's taking place, and so
They'll
they
take
really...
care of it. They're good.
They're good, yeah.
Yeah. Can I take a picture of him? He's making overtime. Can I take a picture of him?
Est-ce qu'elle peut vous prendre en photo?
Ouais.
Vous êtes le djihadiste?
Ouais.
Ah. Ah. I feel safe.
D'où ils sont?
Hein?
D'où ils viennent?
Des États-Unis.
Ah, États-Unis.
Florida.
Floride. Miami.
Vous? Paris?
Non, de Carcassonne.
Oh, Carcassonne, that's the southwest of France, and it has a very strong.
Love locks.
Love locks.
Yeah, you would put locks everywhere with your initials, or you can get them engraved. That's what you were saying. There's the whole process.
Love locks.
Because they were so filled with all these love locks. Love locks.
Okay, you want more of my story of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Sainte-Chapelle?
Love to hear it.
as many stories as possible.
So the Sainte-Chapelle, this king, Louis the Ninth, very, very highest king, and we're doing our crusades, and the Belgians are put in charge of Constantinople, which is today's Istanbul. The Belgian
de Paris, le musée du Louvre. And we start off this cruise with the biggest monument of Paris. On your right, the Louvre Museum.
This is the Louvre on the right. Once was a palace.
Forteresse au XIIe siècle, elle a été transformée en palais royal puis en musée en 1793. This used to be a fortress in the 12th century that turned into a royal palace and then a museum in 1793. Il y a 35 000 œuvres exposées sur 16 km de galeries et en total il y en a 500 000. Si vous passez seulement 3 secondes devant chaque œuvre, il vous faudra 17 jours, jour et nuit pour découvrir l'entièreté du musée. There is 35,000 masterpieces on 16 km façade pour Paris-Orléans, qui était la première destination de cette gare. It was built for the Warsaw in 1900, and this used to be the train station. This is where you can see the letter P and O on its facade for Paris-Orléans, which was the first railroad British train station deserved. Aujourd'hui, vous pourrez voir des œuvres d'impressionnistes telles que Monet, Manet, Gauguin ou Van Gogh. Nowadays, you can see masterpieces from Impressionists such as Monet, Manet, Gauguin, or Van Gogh. 1900, and it represents the Franco-Russian friendship. This is where you can see in its center the armed coats of St. Petersburg, surrounded by two mountains that represent the Russian river, the Ipa. juste avec elle. It's a thousand feet high and weighs 10,000 tons. Nous rénovons la tour Eiffel tous les 7 ans. Cela dure pendant 3 ans et pour cela nous utilisons 60 tonnes de peinture. We renovate the Eiffel Tower every 7 years. This lasts for 3 years and for that we use 60 tons of paint. Au début, les Parisiens détestaient la tour Eiffel, ils la trouvaient moche et avaient peur qu'elle leur tombe sur la tête. At first, Parisians used to hate the Eiffel Tower. They found it very ugly and were afraid it would collapse on them. Elle a été construite pour une durée de 20 ans et a été sauvée en 1906 grâce à son antenne radio et télévision en son sommet. It was built for 20 years, but it was saved